This is a brief history of the Austrian school of economic thought. When most people hear the word Austrian school, they think it has something to do with the GDP of Vienna. But that's not the case. There are many different schools of economic thought, notably the Chicago School of Economics, the London School of Economics, the Keynesian School of Economics named after John Maynard Keynes, the German Historical School of Economics, and even the Spanish School of Economics, which is notably the origins of the Austrian school. If you're looking for some good works on the history of economic thought, you don't have to look further than the Economic Thought Before Adam Smith and the second volume of Murray Rothbard's treatise on the history of economic thought, Classical Economics, an Austrian Perspective on Economic Thought, Volume 2. There was going to be a third volume, but it was incomplete before his death. Another great work is The Austrian School, Market Order and Entrepreneurial Creativity by Professor Jesus Huerta de Soto. When we look at the history of the Austrian school per se, we can trace the history of the Austrian school to the 5th and 6th century Taoists from Lao Tzu and his work Tao Te Ching, to the classical Romans and the Greeks. And then we get into the 16th century Spanish scholastics during the Spanish Golden Age and really following the works of St. Thomas Aquinas. But the Spanish scholastics were notable in the fact that they developed their theories of subjective value on economics, interest rates. They wrote about the relationship between costs and prices, as well as the harmful effects of fractional reserve banking. They also had theories of justice, and they also developed the ideas how a government cannot command and coordinate an economy due to the fact that there is a dispersion of knowledge across the economy that only God knows, not one single man can know. From the 16th century Spanish scholastics, we have the 18th century French Physiocrats. The 18th century Physiocrats and physiocracy really battled the ideas of mercantilism and feudalism during that time. The Physiocrats were also considered free market thinkers. Some of the more notable French Physiocrats were Turgot, Jean-Baptiste Say, Richard Cantillon, who was kind of an independent thinker at the time, Frederick Bastiat. The Physiocrats really developed ideas of natural rights and natural order. They also developed ideas of individualism and laissez-faire economics, of self-interest leading to the coordination of market environments, and private property ownership, and the development of capital theory. Then in 1871, which was considered the Marginalist revolution, Carl Menger, the founder of the Austrian school, developed what became known as the birth of the Austrian school with his simultaneous discovery of subjective value theory. However, it is remarked that the Spanish scholastics really developed the idea of subjective value 3 centuries before Carl Menger. So it's debated if the Austrian school should be considered the Spanish school. But in the line of these free market ideas, Menger, along with Stanley Jevons and Leon Walras, developed the idea that value was discovered on the margin of the last unit of a good, which means that when we value goods, we don't value them in a homogeneous stock of butter or all the diamonds or all the water. It's on the margin of the last available unit that is available to us that we assign our value. For example, in the desert, a glass of water is more valuable to me if I'm dying of thirst than if I'm on the beach or in a civilization with an abundance of water around me available for my consumption. And at the same time, diamonds are more valuable to me in my society. But if I'm in the desert dying of thirst, I'm willing to trade diamonds for water. So value really has a dynamic, subjective nature to it. That is the essence of value, is that we value things from our mind. There is no inherent objective quality to value. That is the distinction between some of the classical economists, namely Adam Smith and David Ricardo, who really developed this labor theory of value or objective theory of value, saying that the cost of production is what contributes to the price of something. When Menger and the Austrians were saying, no, it's the subjective valuations of consumers that determine what the prices are for goods. Menger also, in his work, Principles of Economics, really developed the first fundamental treatise of using the deductive method for economics, beginning with the idea is that man acts and he values things subjectively. Menger also wrote about the origins of money and how it started from barter and direct exchange into using more available commodities that were easily divisible and easy to transport and initiate exchanges with, such as wheat and shells, into the metallic standard of gold and silver. The origins of money also derives from our subjective valuation of what is the most marketable commodity or money-ish commodity we can use for exchanges. Menger had a couple prominent students, most notably Eugen von Bauer, who really developed the ideas of capital and interest, and his book was named such, but it is really a treatise on economics. You also had Friedrich von Mises, who was a student of Menger and developed more the ideas of opportunity cost. The most prominent student of Carl Menger was perhaps Ludwig von Mises, who not only developed the deductive theory of economics through praxeology, which is the science of human action, and beginning with the action axiom, we can derive economic principles. But he also created the idea of the impossibility of socialism with the impossibility of calculation under socialism, which is the idea that in the absence of property, because property and the means of production are publicly owned, not privately owned, you don't have prices. And without prices, you don't have a way to account for scarcity. So you still have the issue of scarcity under socialism, but now in the absence of prices, there's no way to efficiently allocate resources to their highest desired ends. And the result is shortages and surpluses, which is also known in Mises' book Socialism as destructionism and the undermining, if not chaos, of a socialist society. A student of Mises was Friedrich von Hayek, who won the Nobel Prize in 1974. And Hayek really developed the ideas of spontaneous order due to the market mechanisms. Together, Mises and Hayek took on some of the socialist calculations debates, and they also really developed the Austrian theory of the business cycle, which is the idea that with central banking and an artificial credit expansion, this expansionary monetary policy goes into certain investments that are not actually preferred and demonstrated to be preferred by consumers, but are rather artificially inflated. But in time, this has to be revealed. And so then you have the recessionary period where the artificial stimulus to these lines of investment are no longer sustainable. So the correction process must occur where resources must be reallocated to their highest desired ends and prices have to adjust. So the recessionary period is really the cleansing period of the inebriation of this credit expansion, the sobering up process from the drugs. Not only this, the recessionary period is inevitable because there's no way to artificially sustain investment projects based off credit expansion that are not based off the real savings and valuations of consumer preferences. There have been many students of Ludwig von Mises, including Israel Kirzner, who developed a lot of ideas on the dynamic process of the market and entrepreneurship. There was also Murray N. Rothbard, who not only developed Mises' ideas of economics in his treatise Man, Economy, and State, but also applied the method of economics to the provision of all services in a society and really became Mr. Libertarian, or the originating thinker for anarcho-capitalism, where not only service industries and security industries, which people assume to be only able to be provided by the state, but in fact can be provided privately, negating the necessity for the state. In the present day, the Austrian School of Economics is exponentially growing all over the world, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. What remains is the Austro-libertarians who are committed to the ideas of freedom and the understanding that it is interventions in the economy and in society by the government that create these distortionary effects, namely in the economy, the financial markets, and these effects have severe consequences that cannot be overlooked or hand-waved away. This is the nature of understanding economics. Economics is just understanding social cooperation, that we live in a dynamic world and the economy is much more of a evolving dynamic process rather than a machine that can be quantified and tinkered with by pulling the right levers or switches. And I think there's much more beauty to be found in the Austrian school of economic thought as far as understanding that it is creativity, imagination, entrepreneurship, and this whole idea of pursuing profits that bring out the best in people. It is the power incentive, not the for-profit method, but the for-power method that distorts society. And that is the essence of what the state does. So this is a brief overview of the intellectual debate between the different schools of economic thought, and I hope you consider the Austrian school of economics to be much more enlightening than I have just described it. Thank you.